Mark, you went and lowered that microphone on me, huh? Mike Norris had it up high. That's okay, we got it. I can hear myself. I can hear it. I can hear it resonating through the room. It is, thank you, my pleasure to present Earnest McNealy. Ernie was the first African-American varsity basketball coach in this city. He became the head coach at Mission High School in 1963. Now, in the 1950s and 60s, it really meant something to be the first African-American basketball coach. Ernie was the physical embodiment of the desires of a whole lot of people before him. The times compelled Ernie McNealy being a big deal. This was 1963. Many, many years passed, and we need to remember it was a different era. Only 9 years past Brown versus Du Bois, 8 past Rosa Parks, 8 past Emmett Till, same year as Medgar Evers. And Coach McNealy came from Texas. He's a military man. He was part of a migration of African Americans who came here during and after the war, and they had waited to see the rewards of their hard work. They had waited to see themselves recognized and rewarded where their talent merited it, and they had waited quite some time. Ernie was in the vanguard of this wave of African American coaches who leaped through doors that were opening to them in the 60s and 70s. Many of you know these coaches, as they were excellent coaches who were important, not only in the African American community, but in the greater San Francisco community. You all know Herb Blanchard, Bob Miles, Floyd Glenn, Jim Thomas, Burl Toller. Now, Ernie and this first wave of African American coaches were pushed forward by the community. It would not be accurate to say that they gave back. They had never left. There was no back to give. They gave. They were ever present. Now, if you speak to the Mission alumni, they don't sit around talking about Ernie's wins, although I will later. They just talk about how he touched their lives and molded them and guided them. He was a man who could correct you when you were wrong and did wrong, but he did not give up on you when he corrected you. And you can look in the back corner, deep in the back, and what you'll see is a vibrant group of alums from Mission High School who have all gone on to do some fine things. These alums. These alums are a testament to Mission High School and the Coach McNealy. Now, folks, this is a Hall of Fame, and it sure helps when the person who's the first just so happens to be good. Ernie McNealy was really good, and it didn't take a long time for people to see it. That's right, Coach McNealy became the Mission track coach in '62. This was not the sport he was famous for, but the first thing he did, he led the Mission Bears to the AAA championship in 1962. Guess what the second thing he did was? He won it again in 1963. Now you think, wait a minute, the great basketball coach won these track titles. Was this a big deal? Well, yeah. Mission had never won a track championship before. And then Coach McNealy coached Hall of Famers and outstanding track teams and individuals through the 1990s. And once he left, it's been over 20 years. And they haven't won a track championship without him. And they will work on that. But that shows you, nothing before him, nothing since he left. Coach McNealy is, of course, most famous for his basketball coaching. And what a career he had. Mission was a powerful force during his tenure. He coached them to 4 titles, and that doesn't give the full scope because in the 1970s, the AAA was so powerful that there were simply a number of legendary teams, legendary players, people who played Division I, people who went pro. Quite frankly, Mission had a number of those people too. A couple of them were inducted in here the last few years. We've got Prep Hall of Famers, former college players, former pro players from those teams in the 70s, and then he kept Mission strong in the 80s. He kept them strong in the 90s. He did win a title with those 70 groups, but then he came in the 90s and he ran a three-peat. And this wasn't even his most famous group of teams, but he could coach them up and he could mold the men who he coached and the men and women who he taught. Now he's no longer with us, but he lives on in lore and in our collective memories. His name permanently affixed to the Mission High School gym, thanks to those people back there who stood tall and said, put that name on that gym. And now joins many of his peers, his former athletes, and his rivals in the Hall of Fame. And it is my pleasure to bring up Latrice McNealy for her father, Ernie McNealy. Let's give her a hand.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me and my family and honoring my father this evening. My father was 57 when he had me. I am the eldest daughter and second of 5. So hearing all these stories, we didn't know any of those things about our father. Our father was a quiet man, a man of very few words. It was really after he passed that I learned all of these incredible things and how he touched lives of people that were before me, and including after he coached and taught also. Just a little history about him. He was actually born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee in 1923. Then he went to Texas after the military, moved to San Francisco, went to UC Berkeley, accumulated a few master's degrees, and while he was at Mission High School, went to a little island of Samoa to go swoop up my mom, and and you guys know what kind of woman she was. But growing up, he was always around children, always molding, and we've seen that. A lot of times, he missed a lot of things of his own children because he was doing things for children in need, and we didn't understand until we got about middle school what he was doing and why he was doing it. And we welcome the sacrifice, we welcome sharing you guys with our father, because what he was doing, not only was he molding your lives, he was building a foundation and a village for his children's lives. My sister Monique and I were actually named, 2 athletes from his female track team named my sister and I. A student at Mission High School named Marvin, my brother's named after him. Many students and athletes have come to live with us over the years of us growing up. So we were inducted into the lives of the children that he was molding, and in turn they affected our lives as well, and we definitely welcome them. We have a huge family because of it. My parents aren't here. I just lost my mother in February. She would have loved to be here, but my father's standing to my right, my mother to my left. I feel their energy, and they are humbly proud of us being here, and I thank you, the Prep Hall of Fame, for inducting my father. This was a long time coming. Roz Butler, thank you 1,000 times for your relentless efforts in doing what you've done for my father and our family. Who else? Levi Armstrong, Mr. Arterberry, Calvin Jones, Fred Anderson. It's just too many of you guys to name. It's just hundreds and hundreds of extended family, and I love you all. Thank you so much.